At 72, I learned a simple question that changed how my doctor treats me, and it could do the same for you. For most of my life, I went to the doctor like many people do, politely, quietly, and with the hope that they'd just tell me what to do. I nodded along, accepted prescriptions, and left with more questions than answers. But something shifted after I turned 70. The stakes felt higher, my health became more layered, and suddenly, the standard 10-minute visit wasn't enough. I needed more than a checkup. I needed clarity, partnership, and trust. One day, out of frustration more than wisdom, I asked a question I'd never asked before. It wasn't complicated, it didn't require medical knowledge, but it completely changed the way my doctor engaged with me. Now, it's the one thing I ask at every visit, not to challenge the doctor, but to empower myself. And today, I want to share that question with you, because it might just change everything for you too. The truth is, once you pass 60, your relationship with healthcare becomes more frequent and more complex. But what most people don't realize is how rushed doctor visits have become, especially for older adults with multiple concerns. According to the CDC, the average primary care appointment in the US lasts just 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's barely enough time to cover blood pressure and medication refills, let alone dive into sleep issues, mobility changes, or the quiet anxiety that creeps in at night. And when doctors are pressed for time, things get missed. Subtle symptoms, emotional concerns, even potentially dangerous red flags. It's not always the doctor's fault. They're juggling overloaded schedules and ticking boxes on screens, but we live with the consequences. I learned this the hard way, watching a dear friend go through something that shook me deeply. She was 78, sharp as a tack, and always had a way of lighting up the room. But over a few months, she started acting confused, irritable, withdrawn. Her doctor saw her for 10 minutes, ran a few cognitive tests, and labeled it as early dementia. Her family began making plans: memory care, long-term support, medications. But something didn't sit right. Her daughter pushed for more tests. Turns out, it wasn't dementia at all. It was a urinary tract infection, something incredibly common in older adults and incredibly easy to miss if no one asks the right questions. She was treated, recovered quickly, and her clarity came right back. But those weeks, they were terrifying and completely avoidable. It was a wake-up call, one I couldn't ignore. I started noticing it more and more. How often doctors were typing while I was talking. How often I'd forget to mention something because I felt rushed. How sometimes I wasn't even sure they were listening, not really. That's when I decided I had to change how I showed up at my appointments. Not by demanding more time or arguing over results, but by asking one clear, thoughtful question that opened the door to real dialogue. A question that helped my doctor see me as a partner, not just a patient. And in the next part, I'll share exactly what that question is, how I learned to use it, and why it's helped me feel more respected, better understood, and more in control of my own health than ever before. Because your health deserves more than 15 minutes, it deserves your voice. I started noticing it more and more. How often doctors were typing while I was talking. How often I'd forget to mention something because I felt rushed. How sometimes I wasn't even sure they were listening, not really. That's when I realized if I wanted better care, I needed to guide the conversation. So I began asking one question, just one, every single visit. Whether it was for a routine checkup or something more serious, I made it a habit. I look my doctor in the eye and I ask, what's the one thing we should focus on today to keep me healthy? That's it, simple, but powerful. It stops the visit from being a list of quick checkboxes or vague small talk. It forces the doctor to pause, think, and choose a priority. And what I've learned is doctors appreciate that clarity. They're trained to solve problems, but they're often bombarded with so much information in a short time that they have to guess what we think is most important. Now, instead of trying to cram 5 topics into 15 minutes, we focus together. And something else happened too. This question helped prevent what I call prescription overload. If you're over 60, you've probably experienced this: a new pill for every symptom, a supplement for every complaint, a refill just in case. Before you know it, you're taking 10 different things and still not feeling right. This question helped me cut through that noise. At one visit, I brought up my constant fatigue. I thought it was just aging, or maybe a side effect of one of the many supplements I'd been told to take. When I asked that one question, "What's the one thing we should focus on today to keep me healthy?" my doctor stopped and really thought. And instead of writing another prescription or brushing off my tiredness, she reviewed my medications carefully. Turned out I was taking a supplement I didn't even need, one that was interfering with my sleep. We dropped it. She adjusted my care plan, and within a week I felt more alert than I had in months. That one question did what 5 rushed appointments hadn't. It brought us to the heart of what mattered that day, not just what was routine or what was easy to check off. And the beauty is, this question works no matter your age, your doctor, or your condition, because it invites partnership. It shows that you're engaged, that you care about your health, but you also understand the reality of limited time and want to use it wisely. Now, every appointment begins with that same phrase, and every time, it leads to a more meaningful, focused visit. In the next part, I'll share how this question changed not just my health, but my confidence. Because once you start taking charge of your care in this small way, something unexpected happens. You stop feeling like just a patient and start feeling like a person again. Now, every appointment begins with that same phrase, and every time it leads to a more meaningful, focused visit. But this question didn't just improve my checkups. It may have saved my life. A few months ago, I was feeling off. Nothing dramatic, just more tired than usual, getting up to use the bathroom more often at night. And my weight had crept up a bit despite eating the same as always. I chalked it up to getting older. We all do that sometimes. Dismiss little changes as just aging. Still, I asked the question, what's the one thing we should focus on today to keep me healthy? My doctor paused, then said, "Let's do a glucose test, just to be safe." I didn't ask for it, I wasn't there for it, but because we were both thinking in terms of priorities, she decided to dig a little deeper. That's when we caught it, prediabetes. Not diabetes, not yet, but a strong signal that my body was moving in that direction. The best part, we caught it early enough that no medications were needed, just some honest conversations, small tweaks to what I ate, and a few daily walks around the neighborhood. And it worked. At my next visit, my numbers had improved, my energy returned, and I didn't have to start a single pill. All because of one question. It reminded me that so much of health isn't about reacting. It's about seeing the patterns before they turn into problems. And sometimes, all it takes is inviting your doctor to think with you, not just for you. A few weeks later, I was watching a segment on health in older adults, and a geriatrician said something that stopped me cold. She said, the number one reason older adults get misdiagnosed or over-medicated is because we're solving the wrong problem. That hit home, because we often come in with long lists, such as sleep issues, fatigue, foggy memory, and doctors try to cover it all without knowing what we really want help with. And if we don't clarify, they have to guess. That's where things get missed, or worse, treated when they didn't need to be. That's why this question is so powerful. It cuts through the clutter. It puts both you and your doctor on the same page. And when that happens, the quality of your care skyrockets. And here's the truth I've come to believe with all my heart. You don't have to be a medical expert to be your own best advocate. You just have to speak up. You have to show that your health is a collaboration and that your voice matters just as much as their notes on a clipboard. Asking that one simple question didn't just change how my doctor sees me, it changed how I see myself. I'm not just there to be treated, I'm there to participate. And every time I sit on that paper-covered table and ask, what's the one thing we should focus on today to keep me healthy? I remind myself, this is my life, my body, my story. In the final part of this journey, I want to share a letter to my younger self, a reflection on the years I spent afraid to speak up, and what I've learned now about the quiet power of asking the right question at the right time. And every time I sit on that paper-covered table and ask, what's the one thing we should focus on today to keep me healthy? I remind myself, this is my life, my body, my story. But that question, it's just the beginning. As I became more confident in speaking up, I started to realize that there were a few more questions, gentle, respectful, but powerful, that made my appointments even more productive. These aren't confrontational. They aren't complicated. They're just designed to make sure we don't get swept along in routine care that no longer fits the person we are today. One question I now ask often is this test or treatment really necessary for someone my age? I asked this recently when a different doctor suggested a PSA test during a routine lab panel. I'd read enough to know that after 75, PSA screenings for prostate cancer are no longer recommended for most men. They can lead to unnecessary biopsies, anxiety, and treatments that may not improve quality of life at this stage. When I asked that question, the doctor paused, looked at my file, then nodded and said, "Good catch, let's skip it." It wasn't about second-guessing the doctor. It was about making sure we were focused on what truly benefits me now, not what was best practice 20 years ago. Another question I lean on is, could this symptom be a side effect of my medication? This one came from hard experience. One morning, I woke up with muscle cramps so bad I could barely walk across the room. I thought maybe it was dehydration or just one of those aging aches, but something felt off. So I brought it up at my next appointment and asked if any of my medications could be the cause. Sure enough, one of them, something I'd started only a month earlier, listed muscle cramping as a rare but real side effect. We made a small switch. The cramps stopped within days. This happens more than we think. Nearly 40% of older adults take 5 or more medications, according to recent studies. That's 5 different ways your body could be reacting and interacting. Asking this question doesn't accuse, it just invites a second look. And sometimes that's all it takes to feel better faster. The third question I've learned to ask, especially when things start sounding complicated, is, what's the simplest way to do this? We're often given instructions that feel overwhelming. New diets, new exercise routines, new habits that sound more like a full-time job than a health tip. But when I ask that question, it creates space for realism, for small, manageable steps that fit into my life. I remember one appointment where I'd just been told to follow a strict anti-inflammatory diet. I nodded, took the paper handout, and immediately felt defeated. It was 6 pages long, with foods I'd never heard of and a shopping list that would have cost me half a month's budget. So I asked, what's the simplest way to start? My doctor paused and said, honestly, just try adding 1 extra vegetable to every meal. Let's build from there. And that changed everything. It felt doable, encouraging, not overwhelming. And because it was simple, I actually stuck with it. These questions don't take up extra time. They don't require medical training. They simply help us shape the care we receive into something that fits who we are, our age, our needs, and our goals. And most importantly, they remind us that we're allowed to ask, that we have the right to understand, to participate, and to simplify. Because after 70, good health isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things at the right time for you. In the final chapter, I want to leave you with a heartfelt letter to my younger self. What I wish I'd known about asking questions, speaking up, and becoming an advocate for the one body I get to live in. Because after 70, good health isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things at the right time for you. Of course, all these powerful questions are only helpful if you remember to ask them. And let's be honest, when you're sitting in that exam room, it's easy to forget. The paper gown feels cold, your doctor's typing on a screen, and you're trying to recall that one thing you told yourself to bring up, but your mind goes blank. It's happened to me more than I care to admit. I'd walk out of the clinic, sit in my car, and suddenly remember exactly what I meant to ask. But by then, the moment was gone. So I've learned to be a little more prepared and a little more intentional, and it's made all the difference. Now, before every visit, I write down my questions ahead of time. Not in my phone, not buried in my purse, but on a notepad I actually bring with me and hold visibly in my hand. I want my doctor to see that I came ready to engage. I want them to know I'm taking this seriously. When I open the notepad and read from it, it changes the tone of the conversation. The doctor stops, listens, responds thoughtfully. That small piece of paper says, "This matters to me." I've even written questions on sticky notes before and handed them directly to my doctor. It might feel awkward the first time, but trust me, it works. They usually smile and say, "Great, let's go through these." Another tip I've embraced: bring someone with you. A spouse, a daughter, a close friend, someone who knows your health history and isn't afraid to speak up on your behalf. There have been times when I felt too overwhelmed or emotional to catch everything the doctor was saying. Having my son with me made a world of difference. He asked follow-up questions I wouldn't have thought of, and he helped me remember key takeaways afterward. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. It's a sign of wisdom. We all need backup sometimes. And here's one final trick I picked up from a nurse friend of mine. It works like magic. As the appointment is wrapping up and the doctor stands to leave, I say, "Oh, I have just one quick question before I go." They always stop, they always listen. It's human nature. No one wants to rush out mid-thought. So I use that moment to ask something important that didn't quite fit earlier. Maybe it's a concern I hesitated to bring up or something that popped into my head during the visit. Framing it as a quick question makes it feel manageable, and almost every time the doctor lingers and answers thoroughly. These are small shifts, tiny tactics, but together they help me walk into appointments with confidence and walk out knowing I used my time well. Because these days I know that my voice matters, my health matters, and a few extra seconds of courage can lead to months or even years of better care. Next, I want to share the final piece of this story. A letter to my younger self, filled with the hard-earned lessons I wish I'd known decades ago, about advocating, asking, and trusting that even a quiet voice can make a powerful difference. Dear younger me, you thought being a good patient meant being quiet, meant sitting politely, nodding along and trusting that the doctor always knew best. But now, at 72, I know better, and I wish you had too. You didn't need to be loud, you didn't need to know all the answers. You just needed to ask one clear question, to write it down, to believe that your voice mattered, even in a room full of white coats and busy schedules. I wish you had known that your health wasn't something to hand over. It was something to hold gently with both hands. That asking, "What should we focus on today to keep me healthy?" could change not only how you're treated, but how you treat yourself. If I could go back, I'd whisper it to you in every waiting room, every rushed checkup, every moment you doubted whether you deserve to be heard. You do. You always did. And to anyone watching this who's still learning to speak up, I see you, I was you. Start with one question, write it down, ask it out loud, and take back the care you deserve. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take care of yourself, fully, gently, and with purpose.